everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and wow, what a day it's been news-wise. So, what I'm going to do is a bunch of little things here and there. Sorry that I'm doing it this way, but it was too hard to focus in on any one thing. So, anyway, yes, I was going to get a video out this morning, as I told you in the last video, the one about CNN. And by the way, with that, I have no idea what's the deal with the phone number, okay? I just saw it yesterday, and that's what I posted, and I don't know, maybe it was only for a limited time or something, but I have no information on that, so I'm really sorry if it didn't go through or whatever. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into what we've got going here. Starting out, I went to Twitter, and of course, I came across this. One of my friends had posted it. Isn't this lovely? Such a lovely picture of these women. And we have good old Ocasio-Cortez standing there, smiling away with all the rest and everything. Look at what this patriot says. I'd rather have my fallopian tubes gnawed off by a one-toothed yak with Ebola while I get 6 root canals done with no freezing by a blind leper as Weinstein and Wiener waggle their shortcomings in my ears than identify with any of this lump of feminazis. Oh my goodness. I kind of feel the same way. I mean, there's these women out there who think they're doing womanhood a great service, and they're not at all. I don't want to be known with these people. Please don't lump me in with them. I am not a feminazi, okay? It's just very interesting. You go down the Congressional BLM Sharia Club. It's always fun to go down and read these as people are making all kinds of comments. This is an interesting one. Ocasio looks a lot like Huma's sister. Do we have school records, birth certificate on her? Have we been duped? This person agrees, yes, she does. I don't know. She's definitely not as smart as Huma. But anyway, wow, that's a very vivid mental picture I don't need. That was a really good one. That is definitely the post of the day right there. But POTUS has a really close second, so let's go to his account. I love our POTUS. He has such a good sense of humor. This is something he did a long time ago, and he brought it up and posted it, and he says Farm Bill signing in 15 minutes. I love this.
Acres is the place to be. Farm living is the life for me. Land spreading out so far and wide. Keeping hot and just give me that countryside.
York is where I'd rather stay. I get allergic smelling hay. Just adore a penthouse view. Darling, I love you. Give me Park Avenue.
The chores.
The stores.
Fresh air.
Trump Tower.
You are my wife.
Goodbye, city life. Green Acres, we are there.
What a sense of humor the guy has. I mean, he puts this on there for the Farm Bill. And you know what's really interesting about this? This actually makes a statement in a lot of ways. Those of you who are young, you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to talk about a time period before you were probably born, some of you. There were a lot of TV shows on that were about rural America. And that's where the majority of the people were living. And it was our experience at the time. When I grew up and I watched The Andy Griffith Show, and I watched Green Acres, and I watched Petticoat Junction, and those shows, that was my experience because I come from a very small town. And I still live in a very small town. So these shows, and Beverly Hillbillies, who could ever forget that, were all about the part of America that the coasts call flyover country. It was the part of America that turned red for Trump in 2016. We are the deplorables. Y'all notice. Well, this is what was going on in the 60s. They had a lot of these shows, and they were the top of the charts. So what did the business executives of these media corporations do? They decided, oh no, we can't have this. We got to get rid of it. And they went through and purged all of these shows, even though most of them were in the top ratings. They got rid of them because they didn't want people identifying with the main part of the United States. They wanted them identifying with the coast and the city life and things like that. Now, if you live in a big city, you might not see it this way. But those of us who live in rural America, we can see it. Because when we watch TV, we're not watching about people that are like us. We're watching about people who are actually different because they live in a different culture than we do. They live in a city. We live in a country. It's a different culture. It really is. And if you live in the country and then you move to a big city, or vice versa, there's a culture shock that goes on. And that's really what Green Acres was all about, the culture shock between what city life was like and the values and the way of doing things they had, and then the way that the rural Americans were doing things. In some ways, and this is my personal opinion on this, I think the TV executives were thinking they were poking fun at us when they were making these shows. But it didn't turn out that way because that was the majority of the people in the United States at the time. We were like that. We saw ourselves in those characters because that's how we were living. Simple ways. But the executives, part of the elite, look down their nose at us, and they're the people that even today are calling us the deplorables and all the other names we've been called. They look down their nose at us. We are not the people they approve of. And that's why they took these off in the first place, even though they were very popular. And that's why today you don't see any of these kinds of TV shows on. There is nothing that shows a positive outlook of rural America. Everything's set in a city. It's not common to see it. Now, maybe The Connors, I don't know. I haven't watched it because it doesn't have Roseanne in it. But that was one of the things with that. It was not an upper class community. It was a lower class community. And again, it was something they could look down their nose at. But the reason it did so well is it resonated with so many of us because that was more like our life. You have all these TV shows taking place in big cities. It's just not what we're used to. So anyway, I wanted to share this with you because I think it's just so wonderful that we have a POTUS who can kind of laugh at himself. He knows that it's comedy, but he has a good sense of humor. You can tell. And this was one of the things that he put up. And I think it really shows his support for the farmers and those of us who live in rural America. So I really appreciated him doing this. Anyway, let's go on to some other news of the day. Okay, so let's move up from there. And here he gave us a little speech on the safety of American people before politics, border security, because the Democrats are trying desperately to stop the wall from being built. And then this one is a very important one. General Mattis is retiring with distinction at the end of February after having served my administration as Secretary of Defense for the past 2 years. During Jim's tenure, tremendous progress has been made, especially with respect to the purchase of new fighting equipment. General Mattis was a great help to me in getting allies and other countries to pay their share of military obligations. A new Secretary of Defense will be named shortly. I greatly thank Jim for his service. Now, it's very interesting that this kind of comes on the heels of General Kelly resigning. I wonder if these men are not being moved into a new position for the new year. Now, just a little while ago, President Trump tweeted this photo. Oh, well, almost this photo. The Anons have added in John Brennan because Q asked them to. So these are the people that are going to be behind bars. And it says, now that Russia collusion is a proven lie, when do the trials for treason begin? I think when Q was talking about the picture will be the signifier, or however he said that, I think this is what he was talking about. I think this was showing us we have now officially entered the justice stage and nothing's going to stop it. It's coming soon. This picture, when I saw it, it was like, yes, that is so significant. And I think that's what he meant. So here we have the whole group that we're going to be seeing behind bars. Plus, there are tons more. In fact, today's post, Q said the Democrat Party will be no more. Of course, we already kind of knew that because so many of them will be taken out. Now, remember, we had a bunch of Republicans who resigned when they were confronted. But the Democrats didn't. They're still holding on, and they were desperately hoping that they could get things to flip so they wouldn't have to leave their positions of power. That's what they were hoping to do. They still have that hope with the House, but they know they can't really impeach Trump. It will take 2/3 of the Senate to vote on it, and that's simply not going to happen. So they know they can't impeach him. They can cause a lot of yelling and a lot of stink, and they're really probably hoping they can drag it out to 2020 and get somebody else in there. But it's not going to happen because things are going to be tied up on this part before 2020. There's really not going to be much of a Democrat Party left. So those of you who are worried about what happens when the Democrats get in power in the House after the first of the year, I don't think you have to worry about that. I'm not worried about it. I really think that the things that are going to happen very soon are going to take care of that problem. That was never an issue with the Q team. I mean, it would have been nice if we could have gotten it, but I don't think they had that planned. I think they knew that it would go the other direction. Like I told you, it's going to be a bunch of little hodgepodge things. Then we'll get into the Mad Hatter stuff in just a minute. But this one I wanted to show you about Whitaker. Remember that back on November 7th, an Anon posted this article by Reuters, and Q responded to him on November 7th, "There will be no recusal. Panic in D.C. Q." And if you look over here, we now see this is December 20th. New York Post, acting attorney general doesn't have to recuse himself from Russia probe. Whitaker told he doesn't need to recuse himself from Mueller probe report. That's from The Hill. And CNN Politics says, exclusive, Whitaker told he does not need to recuse himself from overseeing Mueller investigation. How did Q know that back on November 7th? Wow! Once again, Q comes through. He knew it ahead of time. He posted ahead of time. There are so many proofs of this. So for those of you who are not Q believers, I understand your skepticism. Believe me, I do. I was very skeptical myself at first. I started seeing things happen, and Q already told us they were going to happen. So after a while, when you see things like this happen, it gets a little difficult to be able to deny it. This is yet another time when Q said it, November 7th, and look, it comes true on December 20th. There we go. Okay, let's head here. McCain associate shared unverified Steele dossier with Buzzfeed, court filing says. Now, there was a court case going on with Buzzfeed. They were being sued, I believe, for putting out this dossier or something. A lot of information came out about that. And McCain had strenuously denied being the source for Buzzfeed after it published the dossier, which was funded by the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. So again, if you don't know they funded it, that's not even questionable anymore. I don't know why there are still liberals out there who claim that no, they didn't pay for it. But yes, it is true. They did. That's an unquestionable fact at this point. This entire article just verifies it, and we already know McCain was acknowledged giving the dossier to the FBI. But until Wednesday, it remained a mystery what role, if any, his associates might have played in the dossier leaking to the media shortly afterwards. So, guess who did it? Yep. That's true. And so there you can read about that. Again, I put all these links down below. It's going to be a bunch of them this time. And how about this one? Democratic operatives created fake Russian bots designed to link Kremlin to Roy Moore in Alabama race. Oh, interesting in that, and I don't know what's wrong. For some reason, Fox News videos don't like my Firefox browser, so they do that to it. It used to do fine, and then they got a bunch of updates, and it just has not been working well. Also doesn't work very well with Facebook videos. It works okay with YouTube, and that's what's important right now. Democratic operatives backed by a liberal billionaire and facilitated by a former Obama official created thousands of fake Russian accounts to give an impression the Russian government was supporting Alabama Republican Roy Moore in last year's election against now Senator Doug Jones. The secret project, which had a budget of just $100,000 and was carried out on Facebook and Twitter, was revealed after the New York Times obtained an internal report detailing the efforts. So the New York Times is actually trying to be a journalist on this. Anyway, very interesting looking through this and reading it. So yeah, it's been confirmed now. Things are starting to spiral in on the Democrat Party. They really are. Now let's get into the meat of this particular video, and that is the Mad Hatter. One of Q's posts said Alice and Mad Hatter. That was something that he posted. This was his original post that I'm popping up here, and this was a response by one of the Anons, HRC, which is Hillary Clinton, and Marty Tory. When it talks about Mad Hatter, that's who we're talking about here. Madam Alice. Not surprising that media going crazy with those elections and pointing to uncertainties instead of opportunities, back to the basic of common sense, goal is peace. Whichever competing aspiring leader over there forgets that will lose the support of the people, especially with the 2-year election cycle. Both sides tired of dying. You picked a heck of a time to be Secretary of State. I think higher office awaits you. Ooh, is that a scary thought or what? Anyway, all the best in what you're doing all over the planet. And he signs it Hatter. So we know for sure that this guy right here is the Mad Hatter that is referred to by Q. Okay, and this one comes from Judicial Watch. This is one of Hillary Clinton's email series, and it is with Marty Tory. And he starts out A. So that stands for Alice. Holy Hatter hat. My local polling station was packed at 6 o'clock a.m. Glad you're not involved in this one. Yikes. So this is about the midterm election in 2010. But WJC certainly made the rounds, including here in Saratoga County for Scott Murphy. Yet gut tells me Murphy has a problem due to Pelosi ties. Safe travels, MH. So, and this is the end of the thread. If you go down to the bottom of the thread and read it backwards, which is what you have to do, he had a meeting with Pervez Musharraf on November 6th in New York City. And he was talking about this friend Joseph here that he had. And Joseph asked me to join him as his interests are purely business, of course. And then it comes back up here and she replies, sounds like an intriguing opportunity. Let me know how it goes, and I hope you and Chris enjoy your time in the land of Alice and the Mad Hatter. All the best from Hanoi, Hillary. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Q followers, but I'm pretty sure that refers to Saudi Arabia, right? Because that's where a lot of the child sex trafficking was taking place. And so that's what that refers to. But anyway, that's one of them. And then we have this thread that I came up with. Marty Tory equals Mad Hatter. And if you go through, it gives a lot of information about this Marty Tory. Some of it, I don't know, I'm not real thrilled with the sourcing on some of it, but some of it is kind of interesting how he brings it up. So this is the Marty Tory that in those latest email exchange between HRC and Tory, you know, the one where he mentions Alice and that she should be the next monarch, signed off as Mad Hatter. He seems nice, hungry maybe, and then he puts Pizzagate and Pedivore on here. But if you look at this, these are some interesting things. Again, I'm going to put the links down below. Some of this is not real easy to read because of how it's put in here, but I'll leave it so you can check it yourself. But look at what this one says. Sorry to bother on State of the Union Day, but not a social call. The redacted, you met at my house, wants to reach to you. He has a serious proposal he'd like to discuss with you privately. He took your advice and established an American water security company last year. Water security company. Think about that. And has been successful. However, he'd now like to expand using his SAS MI5 MOD UK experience and connections and establish new focus on broader American security. Yeah, this guy was MI5. In addition to linking with redacted, former business partner, he's been involved with DHS, SOCOM, and CENTCOM here and has privately been working with the British Embassy while here in the U.S. to our mutual advantage, of course. In March, he will be going to Texas to meet with the Border Patrol personnel. I met with him last week, have read his strict confidence proposal, and find it extraordinary. I earnestly believe it is worth your time to meet with whoever this is, however briefly, as he would like to get your feedback regarding his thinking relative to the need for enhanced, and he has that word in quotes, enhanced security here. His company is the only company of its kind certified by both the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the British Home Office. A serious player, somebody, were linked in January 2009, and key staff at the U.S. DHS tell me somebody is one of the most highly regarded people in the security game. I knew that, but gratified to hear. Further, he has been advising the government of Panama at the highest level. Quite the guy. Also, he's considering moving to the U.S., family and all. Though he is generally in the U.K., he can be in Washington or the location of your choice on 24 hours notice. Please advise. Thank you, and all the best, Marty. And then it goes on, and it has some other things. Interesting that he seems to send Hillary a lot of emails on human trafficking. Just wish they weren't so heavily redacted. So you can read those. And then this one, and he starts out with A, which is Alice. If you can skip down, it's just chatter until you get to Toasted Queen and you are Queen. And then it's just chatter for there on out. But anyway, then he goes on. Clinton Foundation treasure trove of internal documents has that. That would be an interesting thing to check out there. It's on a Google Drive, so you can look at that if you want to. Again, if you take this thread and you just click on them, you'll be able to find the tweets for it. Monarchy for Hillary. Alice, your recent adventures warrant use of Alice. Today discussed coverage of your trip with our British friend. His take is that America should reconsider a monarchy, assuming Madam Secretary will accept the post. That's scary. And then he goes on, yep, we also feel Mideast situation would have more clarity and Gulf of Mexico disaster would have been dealt with sooner. My take is that I am just so proud to know the most influential American on the planet and still want her as Commander-in-Chief. Another adventure behind Alice, accomplished perfectly. Monarchy? So how many campaign volunteers will we need for that one? We'll find them. Hatter. Are you sick yet? Anyway, you can go on and read the rest of these. It's definitely sure that this Hatter is Marty Tory. And then here, this is where I'm a little iffy on it, okay? The rest of it was pretty well sourced. But this right here, when you do these things with associated names, they are sometimes true and sometimes not. So in this case, probably this is true, with him also being known as Martin Torsey. And so that's very possible, and here it has a company with it, the Chief Technology Officer at Aerosys, so you can look through that. But this part right here with the major connections to the Wiener family, maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. Because when you do the possible relatives, this is where it gets iffy. So maybe they are, maybe not. And I know this because I've done these kind of checks on myself. And it sometimes came up with people that I am not related to in any way, shape, or form. So very interesting. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, always take it with a little grain of salt. You know, I saw it happen with Sandy Hook. You've got to be careful when you're doing this. It may be a lead, it may not. Just be aware of that when you're looking through it. So maybe there is a connection with the Wieners, and here it has possible associates, and you have a couple more. Shared an address with the Ann Wiener, who is listed as a relative, so maybe that really is. The shared address would give a little more weight to it, and that would connect him to this guy who volunteered as the Western Massachusetts student co-coordinator for Senator Edward Kennedy. And so you can go through and read all this. Has to do with different things, and so I don't know if it's connected in this way or not, but it could be connected to this guy. Also, sometimes when you follow these, it's this person is connected to that person, is that connected to that person. So sometimes the connection is strong, sometimes it's not. I'm not sure on this one. I'm going to leave it for you to peruse on your own and make your own decision on this, because I'm not real sure about this part at the end, but the first part was very interesting, so it's worth putting down there and letting you decide on your own. So, lots going on, a lot of digging happening on the Clinton issue, and then I want to end with this because I don't know exactly the C-SPAN date of this. I don't know when it happened, but I do want you to hear this. And this is going to be the last thing that I have to share with you. I know it's kind of a weird video where it bounces between things, but there were so many different things I couldn't choose just one. And there are a couple other websites that I want to point out to you later on, but I will do those in a separate video as we go because they have other information on them. But this is what I've got for tonight. Listen to what this guy has to say.
I know I have 45 seconds. I won't take them all. But it is repugnant to me and astonishing to me that during Christmas, I like to call them the holiday seasons to be inclusive, but during Christmas, because the majority always wants to just call it Christmas, that during Christmas, a time in which we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, a Jesus Christ who had to flee for his life with Mary and Joseph. Thank God there wasn't a wall that stopped him from seeking refuge in Egypt. Thank God that wall wasn't there. And thank God there was an administration like this, or he would have too have perished on the 28th, on the day of innocence, when Herod ordered the murder of every child under 2 years of age. Maybe I haven't gone a lot to Bible school, but I know that part. Thank God. Shame on everybody that separates children and allows them to stay at the other side of the border, fearing death, fearing hunger, fearing sickness. Shame on us for wearing our badge of Christianity during Christmas and allow the secretary to come here and lie. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. If the secretary would care to respond to any of that.
Only then to say that calling me a liar are fighting words. I'm not a liar. We've never had a policy for family separation. I'm happy to walk the gentleman through it again. A policy of family separation would mean that any family that I encountered in the interior, I would separate. It would mean that any family that I found at a port of entry, I would separate. It would mean that every single family that I found illegally crossing, we would separate. We did none of those. What we did do is uphold the laws that Congress has passed, and we prosecuted those who choose to come here illegally. As far as not being compassionate, let me just tell you what I have done. And of course, he couldn't be bothered to stay, so I'm happy to tell the rest of the committee.
So, yes, that's the kind of people we're up against, and I have news for him. As a Bible-believing Christian, I can tell him that if there had been immigration laws, Mary and Joseph would have followed them, because that's who they were. They would not have done something illegal. But there were no immigration laws at that point, so they didn't have to worry about it. You know, this is what drives me nuts about them. And especially when they start attacking people and saying, oh, you're not carrying your Christian values over. Yes, I am. I really am. And most of you know what I've said about this. The whole thing is not about immigration. It's about human trafficking. And if you really have compassion for these people, you will want the human trafficking to stop. And that has to happen by securing our border so that they won't be tempted to make the trip. Because remember, 80% of those women and girls are going to be raped on the way to our border. I think that is just atrocious, abominable, and I cannot fathom anyone supporting that. Why would you want them to put themselves in such danger just to get to the border? It's ridiculous, and especially to do it illegally. If you're going to take those risks, come in legally. If you truly are looking for asylum, that's the way to do it. Do it legally. There's no problem if you do it legally. And so this guy right here, what he just said is a big bunch of hooey. God had it all planned out anyway, by the way. So if they're trying to say that it is more Christian to just have no borders whatsoever, I don't think that's valid either, because biblically speaking, they had borders in the Old Testament. When the Israelites came into the Promised Land, they set up borders for each of the tribes. They had borders. I don't get why so many liberals are saying, well, it's anti-Christian to have borders. No, it's not. It's not at all. And all throughout the Bible, you see that there were lands and they had definite borders. And they had cities that were secure, and there was an army to protect them. So none of this is anti-biblical at all. I have a friend who even tried to say that to me, and it's like, really? Seriously? You're using that? I don't think so. So this guy may not know the Bible, but you know what? I do. And I'm telling him what he just said is a bunch of hooey. I wanted to leave you with that. But it's okay because the 21st, which is probably the day this will upload, and the 22nd are going to be some very interesting days. The 22nd is the day that we have the report on the voter fraud coming out, or it has to come out on or before the 22nd. So we know that. If we get all this voter fraud information, that's really going to start the dominoes falling. Because if we can prove the voter fraud, the rampant voter fraud from the Democrats, it's going to expose what's been happening behind the scenes. And that those who are expecting to take seats in Congress after the first of the year are not legitimate. So that's what we have to look forward to. I think maybe that's what's going to come out. I don't know, possibly the FISA. Who knows at this point? I do think something's going to happen on the 21st. I do think something's going to happen on the 21st or 22nd because the 22nd happens to be a satanic high holiday. It's the winter solstice and it's going to be a full moon. And quite often during those times they do human sacrifices. So I really hope that they do something to disrupt that and they don't get to participate in their little holiday. So that's why I'm hoping the 21st or the 22nd will bring some pretty shocking stuff to light. Because once all this starts coming out, there's just not going to be any way anyone's going to be able to hide it. It's going to be out there. And because of venues like this, where people like me can share things that don't get in the mainstream media, it helps to get the word out. This is what has really scared the mainstream media. Because now they're not in control anymore. We the people have control of the airwaves. And this is one of the things that will have to be addressed when all this starts happening, okay? So there's lots to come on that. So want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you all later.